everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Kathy Barnette Show. We're going to get right into it, okay? Because we're talking about Candace Owens and the candy cult. That's what I'm calling them, the candy cult. Now, I was wondering how, I was kind of going back and forth on titles. I didn't know. At one point I was thinking, should I call this episode, how do you know you're in a cult? uh Kind of like, are you in a cult when you hear things like, for example, never forget, real Candace O is actually the only one true person and friend of Charlie's who is actually keeping his legacy alive, just the way Charlie spoken out before they killed him. If you or someone close to you is talking like this, you're probably in a cult. So let me just say, let it be known that not every Candace supporter is in the candy cult. However, when you hear someone hanging on every word she speaks as if it's gospel truth, you're probably in a cult. So, how did all of this get started? Earlier this week, I posted on Twitter. I was just out there minding my own business and I saw a particular tweet and I retweeted it, adding a quote, and things went from there. So here's the quote. If you are listening to me on YouTube, you will actually see this. I will put the image out there, but you can also go to Kathy, the number 4 truth on Twitter, and you can find it. If you have not subscribed to YouTube, please make sure you do that. That's my little bit of housekeeping there. But in this particular tweet, this young lady posted an image of Charlie Kirk holding his newborn baby. And I'm going to assume that it is a newborn baby. The baby must have just been born because it is in that newborn baby swaddling cloth, as well as the baby has on the newborn baby cap that all little babies are given in the hospital. And you see Charlie Kirk sitting there, hair is disheveled as if he's been up all night. And he's looking lovingly, caringly like a father at his newborn child. And the original quote says, with this image attached, never forget what they did to Charlie Kirk. To which I retweeted, adding this quote, never forget what people like Candace Owens is doing to his wife. She dehumanized his wife. She diminished his wife's loss, which caused people to lose their humanity and sympathy for his family's grief. And let me tell you, it did not take long. It did not take long. It detonated a corner of the internet on Twitterdom. And frankly, I believe it tells us a lot about where parts of the MAGA right is headed. Now, if you have been listening to my podcast for any amount of time, you can go and look. There's another video that I did breaking out the 3 distinct factions within MAGA. It's called What's Breaking MAGA. Go out there and look at it. I do an extensive conversation about the 3 parts. MAGA is not differentiated souls. We are undifferentiated souls. We are not all the same under the MAGA umbrella. So the way it detonated on Twitter says a lot about where a certain aspect of MAGA is moving. Now, what I posted about Candace Owens, not as a personal attack, but as a moral line in the sand, because when someone with a massive platform uses insinuations, speculations, and spectacle to diminish a grieving family, something breaks. And it's not just a break in the conversation or in our ability to have a conversation, but something breaks within us. I always go back, as you know, talking to my young children, even my teenage children now, about the golden rule. You guys remember that, right? Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. Show empathy. Do you want empathy? Do you want kindness? Do you want someone to pause for a moment and not judge you right out the box, to give you the benefit of the doubt? And I think actually that this golden rule, that our nation, one of the defining cornerstones of this country that makes us so unique and different from many other countries around the world, is this golden rule. The fact that we can look at another American and we can pause and we can have sympathy and empathy for this particular person. And the response to my retweet talking about Candace Owens and how she has diminished and dehumanized Erica Kirk, the response was immediate. It got over 100,000 impressions, and the candy cult did not disappoint. They descended, and that's what I'm calling the faction that treats Candace's every insinuation as if it flowed right off the lips of Jesus Christ himself. No disagreement. You can't have a disagreement. You can't have a debate. It's immediate dehumanization. And here's what's really happening: by reframing a widow's grief as suspicion, by turning loss into content, into rage baiting, into clicks, people lose their ability to feel something, to feel sympathy, to pause for a moment, to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And once sympathy is gone, then cruelty becomes justified. That's literally how radicalization works. Not through facts, not through logic, not through a dialogue, but through repeated moral permission slips. The more and more, what do I mean by that? Because a moral permission slip is being given. Candace Owens is standing outside of the classroom handing out moral permission slips to dehumanize, to envelop Charlie Kirk's family in a cloud of suspicion, and it is not right. You are listening to the Kathy Barnette Show. I will be right back in a moment. Okay, we are back, and we are talking about Candace Owens and her candy cult, is what I'm calling them. And it all started because earlier this week I retweeted someone else's tweet, but I added my own commentary. And again, my commentary was, someone retweeted a photo of Charlie Kirk looking at his newborn child. His hair is all disheveled, and they said, never forget what they did. Because what did they, quote unquote, do? They took a young man away from his young family. And I retweeted it and I said, also, never forget what people like Candace Owens is doing to Charlie Kirk's wife. She dehumanized his wife. She diminished his wife's loss, which caused people to lose their humanity and sympathy for his family's grief. And let me tell you, within minutes, it got over 100,000 impressions. It got over 1,000 comments. It got over 2,000 retweets. And the candy cult did not disappoint. Now, I don't go and read all of these, everyone's comments, good, bad, or indifference. I don't think is particularly healthy for you to go out there and read this deluge of other people's thoughts about you, good, bad, or indifferent. However, I got the temperature pretty quickly from that, because again, it's exactly what I'm talking about. Candace Owens stands outside of the classroom, handing out moral permission slips for people to do what she does, which is dehumanize Erica Kirk's or to dehumanize Erica Kirk, to diminish Erica Kirk's loss and grief. And again, she hands out these moral permission slips. What do I mean by moral? Moral simply means the difference between right and wrong. She hands out these moral permission slips to allowing her followers, the members of her cult, to define what is right, what is wrong. You get to define what is right, what is wrong. You, her cult members, are the arbiters of truth. Essentially, they become God. They can look into this woman's life and they can say, "Oh, you're not grieving the right way. Oh, you don't look like someone who's grieving. You're not doing it right. You need to do it the way I think you should do it." And I'm not making this up. Let's listen to Candace Owens in her own words. Can you play that video, please?
I felt live listening to this. It is the general tone that is off-putting. It's the laughter that is off-putting. It's, again, we are not even 2 weeks after watching your husband be assassinated. We're talking about numbers and metrics that have been hit. And my husband's dead, not to be morbid. That is a sentence that and this was not my husband, and I had no sort of the type of relationship that she had with him, that I was able to utter. Least of all, I mean, that's moving pretty quickly to the acceptance phase. Now, we know everybody grieves differently. In my imagination, I just thought she would be more upset.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, the overall mood of this call is extraordinarily upbeat. It's extraordinarily happy. But of course, as the CEO and chairman, she does have to address the elephant in the room, the morbid elephant in the room, if you will.
Yeah. So apparently, according to the gospel of Candace Owens, Erica Kirk is not grieving in the right way. Whatever the right way is. Because again, when you stand outside the classroom and you pass out these moral permission slips for people to also demonize, to follow in your footsteps, to follow in your example, you give them permission to determine, well, what is right? What is the right way to grieve? What is the wrong way to grieve? What is the right outfit to wear? How much makeup should be worn? Should we have pyrotechnics? Should we just walk out in a black dress and with a black veil over our face? Like, what is the right way of doing it? And Candace Owens is standing there being the arbiter of truth and handing out moral permission slips for everyone else. Now, what do I mean by moral permission slips? So I put out this post saying Candace Owens, we should never forget what Candace Owens has done to dehumanize and to diminish and to dismiss Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's family. And immediately the Candy Cult came out. I'm just going to read some of their comments to me. One said, I came here. This one is from Truth Within. Truth Within said, I came here for the comments, and they have not disappointed. I knew they were going to be good due to how few likes the post has relative to the comments. They are all trying so hard to squash questions and the truth, but the truth will prevail due to how brave Candace is. She is the GOAT. Here's another one from Jay Land. Never forget that Erica told Candace to stop looking for truth. I seriously doubt that, but I'm going to continue to read. She continues saying, never forget how many times Erica has lied. Never forget she has never commented on where she was the evening of September 8th. Never forget that Candace never went after Erica until Erica lied and went after Candace. Truth wins. Someone else says, Team Candace. Someone else says, ask me the question, dehumanize. She, talking about Erica Kirk, is on tour while their children just lost their dad. What kind of care do their kids have when mommy is never home? Because, of course, this person clearly knows Erica Kirk's schedule, so they clearly know she's never home. That's me. Kind of overlay my own thoughts. But the text continues. Please, you're not going to gaslight us that anything she is doing is normal. And then, right on cue, someone calls me a Zionist. Right on cue, someone says $7,000, implying the Jews are paying me $7,000 to put that post out. Let me just say that did not happen. Here's the last one I will read. I'm going to read one more after this one. Here's one. Poor Charlie. He was so fooled. Or he's alive and was in on it. In any case, Turning Point USA, Erica, and the FBI are all lie. Only Candace knows the truth. Only Candace is fighting the good fight. Not Charlie Kirk's wife, not Charlie Kirk's mom, not Charlie Kirk's pastor, not Charlie Kirk's dad, who I was with a couple of weekends ago. No one knows the truth. No one is trying to find the truth except for Candace. When you hear things like this, I'm reading it so that you can hear, you're probably in a cult. And this particular cult happens to be called, I'm calling it the Candy Cult. Here's the last one I will read. Erica never grieved Charlie. And why is this person saying that? Because the arbiter of truth herself, as you just heard in that video clip, is saying it. Erica Kirk just isn't grieving right. She's not doing it right. Yes, I know. Let me qualify. Let me throw in some qualifications here. Everyone grieves at their own pace. Yet, I'm still going to stand over her, monitoring and dissecting, doing slow reels, slow movements of all of her actions and critiquing every single thing she says and does. And I don't know. That strikes me as wrong. It bothers me that this young man, I did not agree with everything Charlie Kirk said. I mean, I'm not in a cult and I'm not a robot. I have my own opinions. And there are times when I disagree with people. And but laying that to the side, a young man lost his life. And honestly, it was a total kind of quick move right past his murder to churning out bumper stickers and t-shirts. I thought that was of poor taste. I am my own human, my own being. I have my own mind. I think my own thoughts, and that is what I thought. I thought moving so quickly past his death to bumper stickers and t-shirts, it was a bit much for me. And I think you can question that. And you can have your opinions about that. But to swiftly move, cross that moral line, and to assume that someone like Candace Owens, who is behaving more like a scorned lover than a friend, has Charlie Kirk's best interest in mind, it rings false to me. And it feels wrong that this young man has lost his life, and now everything that can be done to dismantle his life's work is being given a gold star, is being given a pass. And in fact, Candace Owens, the Pied Piper of let's destroy Charlie Kirk's family and his legacy, although while calling him my friend, is standing outside the door passing out moral permission slips to anyone who will stand and chime the motto. We don't know, but we know. We don't know, but we know enough to lambast his wife, who has just lost her best friend. Charlie was not Candace's best friend. Charlie was, I don't bet, but if I was a betting woman, I would wager Charlie was Erica Kirk's best friend. And yet, everything I see is moving heaven and earth to diminish not only his wife and his family, but also his legacy. You're listening to the Kathy Barnette Show. I'll be right back. We're going to continue this conversation. See you on the other side. Okay, we are back. You're listening to the Kathy Barnette Show. If you have not already hit that subscribe button, if you are watching me on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, followed by the notification button. If you're wherever you're listening to me, on Odyssey, on the internet, or on Salem Media, Salem Radio Network, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, put out a comment, let them know you're listening and you like it. So we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about Candace Owens and the Candy Cult is what I'm calling them. Now, make no mistake, this is not just about Candace Owens. This isn't just unique to Candace Owens. So if Candace thinks she's special in that way, that's not the case. But what we're seeing this, what I've been describing across political aisles, across media, where influence is outpacing responsibility. These people like Candace Owens, they have a tremendous amount of influence. And the responsibility, us forcing them to be responsible and accountable for their words, it hasn't caught up to all of this influence. And I guess, shame on people like you and I, because prior to these influencers and all these podcasters, we had legacy mainstream media, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and we all saw the fake news coming out of them. We all saw that they were rushing to call an election before we actually knew all of the results. We saw how they were kind of fanning the flames of division, not providing all of the information. And so what did we do? We diversified away from legacy mainstream media, and we started handing power and influence to these podcasters who were coming out and saying what you and I were thinking. And we're like, yes, they will be the ones who will put out information, give us good information, make sure it is balanced. And so, but in all honesty, what we're learning right now is that there's very little accountability over an individual. Like, for example, a Candace Owens versus a large institution that is more sensitive to viewer comments, to advertisers, to our voices, right? So we've given a tremendous amount of power to these podcasters, and we expected them to continue shining a big, bright, beautiful spotlight on the things we wanted them to talk about, like election integrity, like COVID and where COVID originated, and boys and girls sports, and Republicans who aren't behaving like Republicans, but behave more like Democrats than they do conservatives. We thought they were going to put their spotlight on that. Instead, we get Macron's wife has a penis, right? Or we get things like, let's malign and diminish and drag a widow months after losing her young husband through the sand. That's what we're getting instead. It just seems so off balance and so wrong. But as I was saying, what we're watching with Candace is literally the rule book on how to radicalize people. Now, I know people under the umbrella of the Republican Party we like to talk about how the left is radicalizing people. And they are. We have many examples just looking at what's happening in Minnesota. But what we need to on the streets of Minnesota, but what we need to understand is that radicalization doesn't start in the streets. It starts with permission. Remember that moral permission slip? It starts with permission from those who sit high, look low. They have a tremendous influence, very large platform. It starts with permission. It takes a lot of effort. As someone who ran a very successful congressional race as well as senatorial race against Dr. Oz and many others a couple of years ago, it takes a tremendous amount of effort to move the average American off the couch, off the television, and onto the streets. Now, add to that blistering cold weather. It takes a lot to move people off the couch and on the streets in the cold, putting their bodies between law enforcement and a bullet. It takes a lot. That's called radicalization. And grievance is not enough to radicalize people. Just because you disagree with ICE and ICE's mission and what it is that they're doing, you disagree with the border being closed. Perhaps you think the border should be open. Perhaps you think any and everyone should be able to walk into our country. That does not necessarily radicalize someone to get them off the couch, out of their warm home, and into blistering cold weather. Likewise, just saying you disagree with Erica Kirk's outfit, maybe it's too shiny, just because you disagree with how much black eyeliner she wear, or because you disagree with that stern stare that she has, or you disagree with maybe she giggled one too many times and maybe she should just be a wreck at all time. You can disagree. You can have your grievances. That doesn't necessarily radicalize anyone. I mean, we have an entire society with grievances, but radicalization happens when your grievance is validated without boundaries. There's no moral line in the sand. So you can go from she's not grieving right to she must be a part of her husband's murder. She's a part of it. She's working with the Jews to take her husband out. That's a moral line in the sand that you just crossed. And that is what we're seeing. The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that radical movements are spontaneous. They're not. They're cultivated. The right environment, the right atmosphere is created so that people's hate, animosity, fear, anxiety, maybe your life sucks and you want to make somebody else feel bad about their life. That kind of environment is cultivated. And Candace Owens is cultivating that environment that radicalizes the typical American from sitting on the couch, flipping through the channels, snuggled in their warm beds, to becoming really radicalized. Now, we are not on our side in danger of those under the umbrella of the Republican Party going out and putting their bodies between law enforcement and a bullet protecting pedophiles. We're not at risk of doing anything like that. We're not going to be that uncomfortable. We're not going to miss going to the Jersey Shore and hanging out with our grandkids. We don't protest like that. Instead, what we do is that we try to destroy people's lives another way. We dehumanize them. We throw out ad hominems. We say they're not like us. They're not grieving right. They're not a part of MAGA. They're a rhino. They're a part of the WEF. They're Zionists. The Jews. We try to make people untouchable. that way, right? And we also try to destroy them financially. For example, the Treasury Department tells Erica Kirk Turning Point USA is not under investigation following social media rumors. When asked why they came out so quickly to put this information out, because the government is very large, and they were asked, the Treasury Department was asked, why the swift response to aid the conservative organization efforts to combat the social media rumors. A senior Treasury official said, and I quote, "The IRS is able to provide this type of information upon request by taxpayer. And in this case, it's hideous that malicious lies and smears obligated her, Erica Kirk, to make the request." So here you have the strong arm of the government being sensitive to Candace Owens. Candace Owens is the Pied Piper of getting people to request their a refund of their donations to Turning Point. And she is the Pied Piper of causing people to ask for an audit. And here you have the long, strong arm of the government saying, we responded swiftly because of these hideous and malicious lies and smears that obligated a grieving mother to pause what she's doing and protecting her husband's legacy and his family to address these I don't know, but I know allegations. You're listening to the Kathy Barnette. I am talking about Candace Owens and the Candy Cult. I'll be right back. Stay with me. Okay, guys, I hope you are tracking where I am going. You are listening to the Kathy Barnette Show, and I am talking about Candace Owens and the Candy Cult. All of this started because I put out a tweet asking people to remember the humanity of a grieving wife who has lost her husband, and now doing all that she can to protect his legacy, as you have people like Candace Owens coming out with all of these accusations. She doesn't know, but she knows, and everybody in the Candy Cult is like, yeah, Candace is the GOAT, as if everything she says is literally from the lips of Jesus, and it's not. So how did we get here? Because I think the obvious next question, if all of this is happening in plain sight that I've talked about, why is almost no one in the conservative media, podcasters included, willing to talk about it? And the answer is uncomfortable for some of you, but it's quite simple. It's because podcasters are not your heroes. I know. Let me tell you guys, let me break down the podcaster economy. It is a closed loop. A closed loop. This is the podcast economy. It is a closed loop. And you don't want to disrupt the revenue stream of that closed loop. What do I mean by closed loop? First of all, is that all podcasters do is go from one podcast to another podcast to another podcast to another podcast. I know it looks bold, it sounds bold, but it costs them nothing to do it. They go on one podcast after another podcast, they sit, they are very gracious towards the host, talk about how great the host is, how amazing and courageous the host is, sitting behind the microphone like I'm doing right now, how courageous the host is, and they beat their chest, right? But it costs them nothing. Unlike, for example, when I ran for Congress or when I ran for U.S. Senate, that cost me something. I had to give a pound of flesh. I was on the FBI came and started asking questions to friends and family because I was there at the Capitol on January 6th, had an amazing time. I took 2 buses full with me. And for that, slight, the FBI started walking around Pennsylvania asking questions about me. So I'm given a pound of flesh. I was the first person to file a lawsuit uh, on the election, the lack of election integrity in that November 2020 election, because I'm giving up a pound of flesh, right? But for these podcasters, they haven't sacrificed anything. It sounds bold, but all they do is go from one podcast show to the next podcast show. And the reason why you haven't heard any of these podcasters with very large platforms, 3, 4, 5 million followers on multiple social media outlets, is because they're not courageous. And what they don't want to do is to disrupt that revenue stream, because Candace Owens is like a divide in the ocean, right? You have the moment you come out and say, I disagree with Candace Owens, she needs to stop, you have just divided up your revenue stream. And those who are on the side of Candace Owens, you are now no longer allowed to go on their podcast. So you are disrupting the revenue stream. And then the others who may agree with you, they don't want to have you on their podcast, because now you will disrupt their ability to go on other people's podcasts. It's a closed loop, and everyone is highly incentivized. These people are making millions with an S dollars, and they do not want to disrupt the revenue stream. Now, there are some brave souls. I've heard Tim Pool. I like Tim a lot. But Tim is one of very few who will disrupt, who will rock the boat in any way. But there's a reason why you don't see these podcasters with these very large megaphones saying anything about Tucker Carlson giving a very easy layup, alley-oop of a interview to Nick Fuentes. There's a reason why you won't hear anyone say anything about Candace Owens, because the podcast economy is a closed loop. So, and you don't want to disrupt the revenue stream. Speaking out against another podcaster is not seen as courage, is seen as bad for business. Bad for business for you for speaking out, and bad for business for anyone who associates with you, because now you impede their ability to go on other people's podcasts, because it's a closed loop. We all have to just kind of scratch each other's back, and you don't really put the spotlight on each other. So you allow that. So all these podcasters do, they just go from one podcast to another. And we've trained an entire movement within MAGA to confuse talking with doing. And then we wonder why we keep voting for feckless, spineless, weak Republicans who behave more like Democrats than conservatives trying to conserve anything. We wonder why we keep voting for people who go into office and then literally vote for car manufacturers to put kill switches in your car, in your vehicle. What's the point? What's the purpose of writing a bill that encourages or incentivizes or mandates car manufacturers to put in kill switches in your vehicle? What's the purpose, China? I bet China knows the answer to that. I bet Xi Jinping can give us an answer for that. It's called control. And we wonder why we don't have any Republicans with a spine who will get rid of the filibuster, who will pass the SAVE Act, who will bring some integrity to our elections. We wonder why. Because we have literally trained a generation of people to conflate talking big with doing big things. They're not. And most of what you consume as bravery in political media is actually risk free performance. Again, I know it looks bold. I know it sounds bold, but it costs nothing to do. And they get a lot of money for doing it. You guys follow them. The other thing I want to mention real quickly, the reason why no one is saying anything about it is, one, the podcast economy. It is a closed loop. You don't want to disturb that. So you don't want to talk about anyone. The other reason why no one is talking about it is because of the consulting class. Underneath all of this sits the consulting class. The people who actually run Washington, D.C., the people who run the campaigns, and the people who control, they act like gatekeepers, providing access to D.C. And podcasters, look at them. Every time they're at the White House, every time they're at Mar-a-Lago, every time they're anywhere around any of the elected officials, J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio. I like Marco Rubio so much. As well as Donald Trump. They take photos, they plaster it all over social media. Look at me, look at me, look who I'm close to. Proximity, proximity, proximity. I mean, it is so true. I was at the border with a bunch of moms who went down to the southern border to see how bad it really is. And one of the moms, she's not a mom, but she was with us. She was showing pictures of, this is Donald Trump in 2016, of Christmas. And Donald Trump was sitting, you see Donald Trump sitting in the front row with his family. You see the Christmas tree. They're looking at it. And then she was counting how many rows of chairs back she was sitting. Because the closer you are to the president, it means the more within the inner circle you are. And she was talking about how she was naming people was sitting behind her. So therefore, she has greater power, greater clout, greater proximity to power than the other people. This is how these people talk, right? And the consulting class controls the access. Who gets access to that room? And podcasters want access. And so again, the one thing consultants, number one rule with consultants, do not rock the boat. Stability is your friend. Predictability is your cousin. You don't want to do anything that disturbs donations, revenue, money coming in. Hence the reason why Republicans are just so weak and so milquetoast. And they all just smile, just clap like dolphins, and just nod your head and get in office, get power, and enrich yourself and your friends. This is it. I know it's ugly business. But you need to know so that you can stop falling for the okie doke, and so that you know how to determine who you should actually follow and listen to. We all have a million things to do in a day. You're not going to know every single thing that is important. I think it's great for you to leverage the insight and time of other people to consume your news. But you need to know how you should actually go about the business of figuring out who is actually worth following. I'm going to give you four quick things to do. One, do they humanize people even when it's inconvenient? Candace does not do that. Anyone can show compassion when it costs nothing, but watch how people behave when sympathy threatens their narrative. Two, do they tell you the truth when it costs them access? The easiest test is this. Does this person ever say anything that limits their reach? Three, do they calm chaos or monetize it? Leaders de-escalate, performers inflame. And four, do they point you toward responsibility or forever being grieved about everything? That's the test. Play this whole video over and over again. Share it with a friend. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening. I Appreciate you so much. Blessings and take care.